Subcommittee on Workforce Protection will come to order. I note that a quorum is present, and without objection, the chair is authorized to call a recess at any time. Today's hearing will examine the E-Verify program and how it can empower legal employment and protect American workers. Since the start of this year, our nation has made unprecedented strides in the fight to secure the border. According to Border Patrol, crossings at our southwestern border have fallen 96% from September of 2023 to September of this year. With the crisis at the border finally being addressed, it's also important that we look at another issue, ensuring that American workers have the protections they need and deserve to compete against unfair, illegal labor that undercuts American workers' wages. And not only is it American workers who are the victims here, it is all workers. If they're being paid under the table and not given proper workers' compensation medical coverage, they're a victim. If they are an American worker who's having their wages unfairly undercut, they're a victim. Legitimate businesses across America are victims of unfair competition. And social safety nets lose out on valuable resources. Programs like unemployment compensation don't get the payments they deserve to provide for all legal workers across our country. One way to address that issue is through the expanded use of E-Verify. E-Verify is a free, reliable, and proven program run by the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, which helps employers verify that they are hiring only those with a legal right to work in America. E-Verify helps protect Americans from having their wages undercut by bad actors hiring unauthorized workers. It also helps to provide a level playing field for those employers that are doing the right thing, and it treats American workers with respect and dignity. Since 1986, the Immigration and Nationality Act has prohibited employers from knowingly hiring or employing unauthorized workers. Under the law, all employees and employers must complete an I-9 form, and employers must review and verify documents establishing the identity and employment authorization of the employee. However, an employer often cannot know the information and documents received from a worker are valid. This is where E-Verify comes in. An employer can verify a worker's employment authorization electronically in a matter of seconds through the Social Security Administration database, and if necessary, the DHS Employment Authorization database. An employer has no civil or criminal liability when relying in good faith on information provided through the E-Verify confirmation system. Approximately 98% of the time, the employer will receive a result that employment is authorized. When there is a mismatch, the employer informs the worker, who has 10 days to take action to resolve that mismatch. The E-Verify program is voluntary for most employers, and there are more than 1.4 million enrolled. A growing number of states require all or some employees in their state to use E-Verify. Adding E-Verify requirements for employees has bipartisan support. In 2019, I was the prime sponsor of Act 75 in Pennsylvania, the Construction Industry Employee Verification Act, and that was as a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives that I authored that legislation that became law. This legislation had the support of both labor and business groups, and it passed with strong bipartisan support, veto-proof majorities in both chambers of the legislature, and Act 75 helps ensure there is lawful workforce construction in the construction industry in my home state of Pennsylvania, protecting American workers from unfair competition, providing that level playing field that businesses are looking for, and helping to confirm all appropriate taxes are paid. Our witnesses from the construction and home building industries will share their experiences and their perspectives on how mandatory E-Verify in their states and industries has worked for them. They will also discuss the need to enhance workforce development to bolster the American workforce in these industries. We can build on these lessons to ensure that more American workers than ever before are given the critical protections they deserve. An area where mandatory E-Verify also makes sense is for federal contractors. We should be using E-Verify for all federal contractors, but under current regulation, not even statute, only under current regulation, only large federal contracts must use E-Verify. Small dollar contracts and short-term contracts are excluded. That's why I've introduced H.R. 2641, the Day One, Dollar One E-Verify Act, to codify a requirement that all federal contractors use E-Verify. We should all agree that businesses providing services to the federal government and being paid with taxpayer dollars must verify their workers as lawful. We also know that E-Verify is not perfect, and so we want to work to improve the system. Fraud can still occur through the use of stolen Social Security numbers and other forms of identity theft. But E-Verify remains a common-sense win for the American people. It helps employers comply with the law while advancing the public policy goals of ensuring a lawful workforce, protecting American workers, and guaranteeing a level playing field for businesses hiring legal workers. With that, I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, and now I yield to the ranking member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for your testimony today. Welcome back, everyone. I hope my colleagues across the aisle are rested from their 8-week-long paid vacation. Over the last 2 months, I've been speaking with my constituents, and I've heard firsthand how the Trump administration's reckless economic policies and the Republican-fueled healthcare crisis are impacting their lives. From higher utility prices to expensive grocery bills to rising healthcare premiums, working families are feeling the strain as the cost of living continues to climb. I had hoped that Congress would return ready to address the real issues affecting the American people. Instead, our hearing today revolves around E-Verify, a 20-year-old program that we already know does not work. E-Verify is an electronic employment eligibility verification system that began as a voluntary pilot program and is now used by only a small percentage of employers. Nothing stops any employer from voluntarily using E-Verify. But despite that fact, that has existed for decades, very few employers use it. Why? Because it simply does not work. Since 2006, my Republican colleagues have repeatedly tried to mandate its use across the board. But those efforts have all failed because of broad opposition. Widespread use of E-Verify is opposed by small business communities, civil liberty groups, religious organizations, agricultural associations, and growers, privacy advocates, libertarian think tanks, and immigration reform groups. Even some libertarian politicians have warned that a national E-Verify mandate would hand the government the ultimate on-off switch for whether any American is allowed to work. Think about that for a moment. My Republican colleagues claim to be pro-business and the party of small government, and yet they want the federal government to expand a program that would only work with a massive national database that tracks and consolidates private worker information. In practice, E-Verify has proven ineffective and harmful to employers, immigrants, and American workers. This system often generates errors that deny American citizens and legal permanent residents job opportunities that they are fully qualified for. In 2018, a study by Cato Institute revealed that over 70,000 legal American workers were told by E-Verify that they were not authorized to work. If every employer were forced to use E-Verify, experts estimate that those errors would hit roughly 200,000 legal workers every year, with tens of thousands wrongly pushed out of the labor market entirely. E-Verify can also facilitate hiring discrimination against job applicants of color, especially those from Latino backgrounds, because employers might unfairly avoid hiring workers who look like they might not pass the system. So this is the Republican plan, an ineffective system that is harsh on workers and burdensome on employers. And at a time when the surveillance state only continues to ramp up under President Trump, the last thing we need to give the government is another tool to intrude on our constitutional rights and economic freedom. To truly help workers, Congress should focus on policies that address the real needs, such as rising wages, guaranteeing paid leave, and ensuring access to quality, affordable health care. Instead, congressional Republicans are trying to distract us from their own failing agenda. They are blaming immigrants and driving our communities while they rip away healthcare and nutrition assistance from millions of Americans and jack up prices with their reckless tariffs in order to pay for massive tax cuts for the rich. At a time of real economic uncertainty, our job should be to protect people's livelihoods and bring costs down. E-Verify does nothing to help people pay for their food, their rent, or their childcare. It does nothing to protect workers from wage theft, abuse, or unsafe working conditions. And instead of focusing on a flawed system that would worsen discrimination, complicate life for small businesses, and cause undue stress for job seekers, Congress should use its power to address the real needs of working families. Despite America's plea for help, Congress has not raised the federal minimum wage in 15 years. We are not focusing on how to expand access to paid leave, childcare, or healthcare. In this very subcommittee of workforce protection, we have yet to hold a hearing this year that actually expands workers' protection. These are the things that this Congress and this subcommittee should focus on, to create an economy that works for everyone, not just for the wealthy and the well-connected. It is time to get back to work and deliver on the issues that the American people truly care about. When I'm in my district, small business owners and workers are not asking for us to mandate E-Verify. I'm hearing about prices rising, wage stagnation, hardworking people unable to find jobs, small businesses struggling under the weight of President Trump's tariffs. If we want to support the working class people, we need to address these issues and invest in our workforce, not build another broken surveillance tool. Thank you, and I yield back.
Pursuant to Committee Rule 8C, all members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word format by 5 p.m., 14 days after this hearing. And without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 14 days to allow such statements and other extraneous material noted during the hearing to be submitted for the official hearing record. And now to the introduction of witnesses. Our first witness is Mrs. Jamie Andrus, the Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for Cadell Construction in Montgomery, Alabama. Mrs. Andrus is testifying today on behalf of Associated General Contractors of America. To introduce our second witness, I'd like to recognize the Vice Chair of the full committee, the representative from Utah, Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce Chris Gamvulis. He's the president of Ivory Development in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's testifying on behalf of the National Association of Home Builders, and Utah is a very unique, innovative, collaborative state, and Chris is going to be a valuable voice today as we continue to have this conversation. So thank you, and you're back.
Thank you. Our third witness is Ms. Jessie Hahn, a senior counsel for labor and employment policy at the National Immigration Law Center here in Washington, D.C. And our final witness is Ms. Rosemary Jenks, the co-founder and policy director for the Immigration Accountability Project, also in Washington, D.C. Thank you to all of you for being here. We look forward to testimony from each of you, and pursuant to committee rules, I will ask that each of you limit your oral testimony to a 3-minute summary of the written testimony which you provided. As committee members may have many questions, the clock will count down from 3 minutes. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8D and committee practice, however, we will not cut you off until you reach the 5-minute mark. I would also like to remind the witness to be aware of their responsibility to provide accurate information to the subcommittee. And with that, I will recognize our first witness today, Ms. Andrus. You are recognized for your testimony.
Chairman McKenzie, Ranking Member Omar, members of the Subcommittee on Workforce Protections, thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Jamie Andrus, and I serve as Vice President, Chief HR Officer at Cadell Construction, a general contractor based in Montgomery, Alabama. We are proud to work with the federal government to help build a range of civilian and defense installations across the U.S. and overseas. I am testifying on behalf of the 27,000 members of the Associated General Contractors of America, or AGC, the leading association in the construction industry. At Cadell, my responsibilities include ensuring that every member of our domestic construction teams are authorized to work in the U.S. and that we fully comply with employment and immigration laws. We use E-Verify on every hire for our U.S. projects because we believe that having a legal workforce isn't just our obligation, but it is at the heart of our commitment to fairness, integrity, and our culture. E-Verify has been a useful tool, but it is not perfect. As Congress considers policy options, I respectfully offer the following. Improve the system's accuracy. Some construction firms report that individuals who pass an E-Verify check are, in fact, undocumented workers. Also, consider eliminating the requirements that contractors who complete E-Verify also complete I-9s for those same workers. This places redundant compliance burdens on employers. We urge you to include compliance and technical assistance support for E-Verify users, particularly smaller businesses. Many construction projects include multiple construction firms. For instance, general contractors hire subcontractors who, in turn, subcontract portions of their work to other firms. Each firm should be individually held accountable for compliance with E-Verify requirements. Provide notices to employers regarding changes to work authorizations. Construction firms like ours want to be in complete compliance, but few firms have the bandwidth to constantly check to see if there have been any unannounced changes in work status. And finally, we urge consistency. There's a patchwork of varying state laws that make compliance more complex and costly. A clear, uniform federal standard would serve everyone better. But the biggest problem with E-Verify is that we simply don't have enough qualified workers available for construction firms like ours to hire and verify. The AGC recently shared that 92% of construction firms are having a difficult time finding enough qualified workers to hire. The federal government spends 80% of its workforce development dollars encouraging workers to pursue a 4-year college degree, yet only 38% of Americans earn a 4-year college degree. That leaves only 1/5 of federal dollars to support nearly 2/3 of the workforce. And this funding imbalance is contributing to acute labor shortages within the construction industry, prompting firms either to not bid on projects, to raise prices, or to delay their construction schedules on projects they are bidding. We strongly support greater investment in domestic workforce development, including expanding access to trade schools, apprenticeships, and skills training. Because those efforts will take time, we encourage Congress to consider establishing new and expanding existing employment-based visas that could provide lawful workers while we work to prepare more Americans for permanent, high-paying careers in construction. Cadell and the other members of the AGC stand ready to work with Congress and federal agencies to strengthen our workforce, improve compliance, and ensure that America's infrastructure gets built by a legal, skilled, and reliable workforce. Thank you again for inviting AGC to testify before the committee today. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I'll now recognize Mr. Gimvroulis for your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on behalf of the National Association of Home Builders on E-Verify. To ensure that Ivory Homes only employs individuals authorized to work in the United States and to comply with Utah law, we have used the E-Verify employment verification system since 2010. Ivory Homes recognizes the important role businesses play in ensuring a legal workforce. Our human resource team conducts employment verification for all new hires. While not entirely error-free, the system is easy to use, and we have only encountered 2 instances of identity mismatch in the first few years of using the system. While E-Verify can be a logical starting point for discussion, it is not a substitute for the broader conversation around comprehensive immigration reform. That being said, I believe that certain recommendations will make it as accessible for small businesses as it is for larger and more well-resourced organizations. Our members are first and foremost small business owners. Indeed, 80% of the members of NAHB have 10 or fewer employees. A few recommendations. First, any legislation must maintain current federal guidance that employers are responsible for verification of the identity and work authorization status of their direct employees. While we do not verify the employees of subcontractors, we do require our subcontractors to follow Utah law to verify legal work status of their employees. Further, we are prohibited from knowingly using unauthorized subcontract workers as a means of circumventing the system. Second, any requirement should provide a very strong safe harbor to ensure that those who use the system in good faith will not be held liable for errors in the system. Third, employers should be able to begin the E-Verify process when a worker accepts a position, rather than be required to wait until after the worker's start date. This cannot be understated. We use valuable resources, precious resources, and we have to do the E-Verify after an employee accepts a position. Fourth, providing a telephonic option for employers to complete the E-Verify process is important. The reality is that the new homes in America are built in suburban and exurban locations that lack necessary internet infrastructure. Fifth, if employers are going to be required to use a federal E-Verify program, they must be assured that there's only one set of rules for compliance. As Congress considers how best to implement comprehensive immigration reform, we also urge you to pair the discussion with solutions for boosting our domestic workforce pipeline. In conclusion, I believe these recommendations can make E-Verify a system that's accessible to all. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. And next, I'll recognize Ms. Hahn for her testimony.
Chairman McKenzie, Ranking Member Omar, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jessie Hahn. I'm Senior Counsel for Labor and Employment Policy at the National Immigration Law Center. NILC has advocated for improvements to the E-Verify program since its inception as the basic pilot program in 1997. Our position on E-Verify has always been clear. Expanding this flawed system without comprehensive immigration reform and strong worker protections will harm workers, employers, and the economy. Today, I want to focus on three critical points that underscore why a nationwide E-Verify mandate would be a disaster. First, E-Verify is not ready for the millions of small businesses that would be forced to enroll under a national mandate. Only 13% of U.S. employers currently use E-Verify, despite its availability for more than 2 decades. That means 87% of employers, most of whom are small businesses, do not participate. And even in the states that have decided to require E-Verify, compliance is low. Fewer than half of the employers who are required to enroll have enrolled in those states. A recent GAO study of the federal contractors required to enroll found that only 15% had done so. This is in the states and the businesses that are required to participate in E-Verify already. And why are they resisting? Because E-Verify is costly and it's cumbersome. Large employers with HR departments can absorb the burden, but small businesses cannot. They face complex verification processes, mismatches that delay hiring, and compliance costs that they are ill-equipped to manage. Forcing millions of small employers into this system without addressing these challenges will create both a massive compliance problem as well as disproportionately harm small businesses. Second, E-Verify does not shield employers from ICE raids or other enforcement actions. There is no safe harbor for participating in E-Verify. ICE raids have devastated companies that have used E-Verify for years, even in states where it's mandatory. Poultry companies in Mississippi, meatpacking facilities in Ohio and Nebraska have all faced raids and mass detentions despite participating in E-Verify. Why? Because E-Verify cannot detect identity theft or confirm that the documents belong to the person who is presenting them. So employers who do everything right still remain exposed to audits, raids, and the reputational harm. If the system cannot fulfill its core purpose of accurately verifying work authorization, then what is the point of mandating it? Finally, even the Trump administration has admitted that E-Verify is unreliable. They promote it as a cornerstone of immigration enforcement, but at the same time, DHS has acknowledged that the system is susceptible to identity fraud and lacks photo matching capabilities in many states. The White House itself even criticized a Maine police department this summer as reckless for relying on E-Verify to check the work authorization of a recent hire. At the same time, the government is ramping up I-9 audits and worksite raids, creating a compliance paradox for employers. Employers are told to use E-Verify, but they're warned it won't protect them. This double bind forces businesses, especially small businesses, into an untenable position where even those who are trying to comply with the law cannot get a reliable answer from the government's own verification system. In short, E-Verify is not ready for a nationwide mandate. It's inaccurate, it's vulnerable to fraud, and it's not even enforced where it's currently required. So expanding it to millions of small businesses will destabilize labor markets, push workers off payroll and into the informal economy, and expose employers to greater risks. Congress should reject any mandate until E-Verify is reformed and paired with strong worker protections and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented workers. Anything less will create a crisis that harms workers, employers, and the economy. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
And our last testifier is Ms. Jenks, and I recognize you now for your testimony.
Chairman McKenzie, Chairman Wahlberg, Ranking Member Omar, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today about E-Verify. E-Verify is a critical tool for deterring illegal immigration to the United States. The vast majority of illegal aliens are coming here for economic opportunity, in other words, jobs. Prospective illegal aliens make a rational cost-benefit analysis if they believe that the economic benefits of entering illegally outweigh the risks of the journey and of being apprehended and returned home, they come. If they know they will not be able to obtain work here, many will not come. Removing the benefit of easily obtainable jobs significantly shifts the calculation. In addition to deterring illegal immigration, E-Verify is a necessary tool to prevent the exploitation of illegal labor by international smuggling cartels and unscrupulous employers. The cartels make billions of dollars smuggling people into the United States based on the promise of jobs here. Once they arrive, often in debt to the cartels, illegal aliens are vulnerable to unscrupulous employers. E-Verify is essential not only to deter illegal immigration, but also to provide good faith employers with a cheap and effective way to verify that the documents submitted by new hires are valid. With the proliferation of fraudulent documents, E-Verify removes the burden on employers to be document fraud experts so long as the documents submitted by new hires are reasonably valid on their face. In the absence of E-Verify, employers find themselves in a bind. If they accept documents that turn out to be fraudulent, they can be held liable for employing unauthorized aliens. But if they request additional documents, they can be sued by the employee for civil rights violations. E-Verify eliminates that problem by allowing employers to submit the information on the documents for verification by the government and then to rely on that verification. However, voluntary use of E-Verify may create an uneven playing field for some businesses. A business owner who, wanting to obey the law, participates in E-Verify may have to pay a premium to recruit legal workers. His competitor, who doesn't participate in E-Verify and doesn't mind violating the law to hire illegal workers, will be able to undercut the law-abiding employer by paying reduced wages and cutting corners on benefits and safety compliance. Abiding by the law should not be a competitive disadvantage. Is the E-Verify system perfect? No. It is still possible for illegal aliens to game the system by using the identity of an American citizen or authorized alien worker. This problem would be alleviated by requiring states to share driver's license photos with E-Verify. During the first half of 2025, more than 21 million new hires were run through the E-Verify system. 97.8% of those cases were confirmed virtually instantly. In order to become a truly effective deterrent to illegal immigration, E-Verify should be made mandatory for all employers in the United States. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, and under Committee Rule 9, we will now ask questions of the witnesses under the 5-minute rule, and I will recognize myself first. The first question I have is for Ms. Andrus. Your written testimony notes that your company has been using E-Verify for nearly 2 decades, processing thousands of new hires, and you found the program to be generally reliable and efficient. In addition to complying with the law as a federal contractor, what do you see as the additional benefits of using E-Verify?
Thank you for the question. We certainly see the additional benefits being that we have the ability to maintain a qualified and verified workforce. It's a huge commitment of ours to not just our employees, but also our own clients to be able to have stable workforce, to be able to meet their project schedule, to deliver on what it is that we say, and it creates a lot of trust among our construction team members as well. It provides a lot of it just really aligns with our commitment to ethical hiring and provides a consistent approach as we grow our workforce.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Jenks, in your written testimony, you discussed the prohibition on employers knowingly hiring unauthorized workers and their obligation to examine employment authorization and identification documents for new hires. However, you point out a flaw in this system. It's challenging for employers on their own to confirm the validity of those documents. Could you elaborate on how E-Verify provides a solution for those employers? If you can, microphone, please. Thank you.
I did it. What happens is that the fraudulent documents have increasingly become better and better over the last few decades. We know that. There's a massive industry in fraudulent documents in this country, a lot of it generated by the cartels. And so the better the documents get, the harder it is for any average person to identify those documents as real or fraudulent. So, I mean, we have people in law enforcement who have studied fake documents for decades and may still have trouble identifying a good fraudulent document. So an employer shouldn't be expected to do that. You know, we have the I-9 system. That was the initial version of, well, we don't want you to hire illegal aliens because we know that that undercuts American workers and their wages, and it also leads to exploitation. But we recognize now that a paper system in the I-9 form is not sufficient, because that means that the employer has to be able to recognize this document that this new hire just handed over is fake. And that's just not a reasonable expectation. So by allowing the employer to type in the information into the E-Verify system on those documents and get an almost instantaneous answer in 97.8% of cases, that the employer can rely on. And by that, I mean that the employer who relies on that information is not going to be prosecuted. It does not mean that the worker, if the worker turns out to be illegal, that worker will still be deported. So the employer will lose that worker, but the employer will not be criminally prosecuted for knowingly hiring an illegal alien.
So with that growing challenge of false and stolen identities that are being used to circumvent E-Verify, in your view, what policy changes should we make to close those gaps?
The most important policy change at the moment is to require states to share the driver's license photos. E-Verify already has a partnership with the NLETS system that allows for E-Verify to verify the authenticity of a driver's license in, I believe it's 44 states and jurisdictions. There are 10 states that do not share even that information, but the additional step that's needed is to share the photo, because the only way that we're going to get at stolen identities, and remember, for every stolen identity, there's an American or legal resident who's been victimized by that. So to get at that, we need for the employer to be able to compare the person standing in front of them, the person on the document that they provide, and then the person on the document as it was issued by the state. So that three-way comparison is what is critical to getting rid of that last part of the problem with E-Verify, which is stolen identities.
All right, thank you for that. My time is about to expire, so I'm going to recognize next the ranking member, Ms. Omar from Minnesota.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Han, thank you so much for joining us today. In your written testimony, you outlined several reasons why the E-Verify does not work the way that committee Republicans claim it does. Could you walk us through the most significant problems with E-Verify's effectiveness? And what do you know about the system's error rates and the number of work-authorized people who are wrongfully flagged or rejected from employment each year?
Yes, thank you for the question. So mandating E-Verify nationwide would be a mistake because the system is not ready for the millions of small businesses that are not currently enrolled. Part of what we know about who is enrolled, that 13% of employers who are enrolled, is that they tend to be much larger employers. So they tend to have HR departments and more infrastructure and capability to handle compliance requirements, unlike the smaller businesses that by and large are not enrolled and do not have that type of in-house assistance to handle the burdens. So that means that they need to do things like technology upgrades and staff trainings, and they'll be facing different types of operational challenges in order to get to a point of compliance. And on a nationwide level, people who have researched that have estimated that it would cost those employers collectively billions of dollars to do that, to reach that. Even for businesses that do comply, those companies, as we have discussed, already face raids and audits. It doesn't stop that from happening. Despite championing the system, the administration is unable to kind of give employers any real protection against the unreliability of the data. So what we don't have good current data on the reliability of the system. And I think one thing that the committee could focus on is getting a more current study on the error rates, because the last time an independent external evaluation was conducted was in 2009. That's a very long time ago. But if you take the error rates that they found at that time and you apply them to our current employment numbers, our national folks participating in the workforce, in the labor force, we think that anywhere between roughly 200,000 and 520,000 people each year who are work authorized and have been hired and accepted an offer of employment would be wrongfully denied because of the errors in E-Verify, the opportunity to start that job. And I know that proponents of the system will talk about, it's got a 97, 98% effective rate. The fact is that in your jurisdiction, if you have people coming to you because you were denied the ability to start a job that you had been offered and you have work authorization, that is still not going to be an acceptable number of 97%.
Ms. Han, do you think the federal government should create this kind of national database for workers? And why does this idea give you a pause?
Yeah, so I think in order for E-Verify to function properly, it would require a massive consolidation of data that does not currently exist, right? We would need state agencies and federal agencies. We would need the photo databases, and then in addition, what we haven't even talked about yet is the flaws in the SSA database and how those affect people in this system as well, right? The Numident database, which is the name of the database at SSA, has errors in roughly 17.8 million of its records, and including things like outdated citizenship status for foreign-born workers and lawful immigrants. And so this is the reason why there's a higher error rate and disproportionate harm to people who are naturalized citizens or who are work-authorized immigrants. And so in order to correct all of those things, you would have to consolidate across federal and state systems a massive amount of personal data And then it would need to be continuously updated, and you would have to link the identity information across the country. And that process is not only impractical, but it would effectively create a centralized national ID infrastructure that tracks every worker in America. And that raises some serious privacy concerns. And beyond the risk of hacking, I think it also would expand the government's, it would enable the government to conduct surveillance far beyond employment verification, eroding civil liberties and creating a tool to monitor individuals in a way that it was never intended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to our esteemed chairman of the full committee, Mr. Wahlberg from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this hearing. Important subjects. Ms. Andrus, thank you for being here. This committee, as you know, has jurisdiction over workforce issues and certainly over training issues. We're keenly interested in seeing employees have their skills enhanced and the opportunity for a fulfilling life. You mentioned in your written statement that construction wages are 19% higher, which is significant, than the average for all private sector wages. However, as we know, many of your construction jobs aren't filled for lack of employees to be there. So what recommendations do you have to increase the number of qualified workers, keying in on qualified workers who could fill these good-paying jobs?
Thank you so much for the question. There are multi-steps that should be taken to help grow the workforce in general, but specifically for the construction industry. Expansion of workforce development programs, starting as early as primary or elementary levels so that children and their support systems have access to not just that construction is a career, but it is a desirable one that creates legacy and provides for families and is something that really you can be a part of something much larger. It is not what people typically think that the industry is. So those workforce development programs, vocational trainings available to high school students, increasing support for trade schools, allowing them to take on more students at an earlier age as well would be supremely helpful. Continuing to partner between schools, community colleges, four-year programs, and providing that practical aspect to what it is that construction brings and what that industry is. Supporting apprenticeships, mentorships, on-the-job trainings, all of those things are incredibly helpful to allowing individuals who don't know much about construction but would be a great fit for the industry to be able to explore their own skills and their own strengths and be able to bring that into the industry. One of the things that we have done specifically, along with a number of the firms within AGC, is a really renewed investment into internship programs. And that can certainly come from four-year degreed students who have it as a requirement, possibly, of their program, or just something that they want to have the practical training to go along with what it is that they are learning in a classroom. But that increase in internships is really a key part of what I know is helping us internally develop our workforce, and other firms are seeing that as well. So support and policies that just promote recognition, that promote the desirability, that talk about the just the practical aspects, that it is a high-paying career, and there's a lot of movement that individuals can have within the industry would be supremely helpful.
Appreciate that, and it's another reason why we're very, very pleased that finally we got Workforce Pell, short-term Pell, into the One Big Beautiful Bill, which we'd like to expand as well. Thank you. Mr. Gamvroulas, your written testimony says that most home builders do not use E-Verify. What could the program do to make it easier for home builders to use E-Verify?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. One, it would be to continue to make it very accessible. I noted in my testimony that 80% of the members of the National Association of Home Builders have 10 or fewer employees. to a large degree, they just don't even know that it exists. These are sole proprietors, they're general contractors, they're mom and pop operators, and that is true for both the home builders and the subcontractors that build our homes. And I think that that's one of the reasons why most of the members of NHB don't use it, is because they just don't even know that it's there. And I do think that if it were to be expanded, there would be two things. One, an education campaign, but also a phase-in program where you would start with the largest employers and work it back and phase it into the smaller operators.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jenks, I assume that having a safe harbor for employers would benefit the use of E-Verify. You would agree, I'm sure?
Absolutely.
And I have so many other questions, but I think what your point you made in your testimony was that while there are problems, yet the benefits of having this as a tool will work well. So my time has expired. I don't want to run the risk of using the good benefits of the chairman, so I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we'll go to our friend from the minority, the ranking member, Mr. Scott from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Andrus, excuse me, you indicated you had many recommendations to improve the E-Verify system. Does your organization support it if those recommendations are not achieved?
Do you mind repeating the question?
Does your organization support mandating E-Verify if we don't follow those recommendations and fix it first?
The system as it is something that we support, and recommendations to increase the accuracy and the efficacy of it would be something that the AGC would support.
Well, would you recommend mandating it for everybody? If we don't follow those recommendations, if we don't fix it first, would you still support the mandate? Well,
yes.
You're not under subpoena. You don't have to answer.
No.
Mr. Gavrilis, you indicated that small businesses aren't ready for this. What do they do now?
Thank you for the question. By and large, they don't actually use it. It has been the law in the state of Utah since 2010. The threshold for businesses initially was 15 or more employees. That threshold was increased in 2022 to 150 employees. And so by and large, in the state of Utah, most small businesses, which the home builders and subcontractors are by and large small businesses, are actually not using it. That being said, they're still prohibited by law from knowingly using undocumented workers.
So how do they verify whether people are documented or not?
I don't know.
Okay. Ms. Jenks, if you have a very strong system, did you suggest that people might be working, as they say, off the books?
It is entirely possible that some employers would still hire illegal aliens off the books, certainly. But if there's a mandate for E-Verify, that becomes much easier for law enforcement to target.
To target working under the books?
Exactly.
Okay. Ms. Hahn, can you say something about what happened in Arizona?
Yes. So Arizona was one of the first states to enact a statewide E-Verify mandate. And what we saw is that after 5 years of that law going into effect, only a third of employers had started to use it. But more broadly, the issue is that it pushes workers off of payrolls and into the informal economy. And then that has knock-on effects, right? Because it's not just that they're no longer on the payroll, it's that the taxes aren't being paid on those payrolls. And so specifically, what they found in Arizona that was so interesting was that they documented that the state income tax collection had dropped by 13%, but the sales tax collection only fell by 2.5%. And so what that indicated to the researchers was that the workers were still there and they were still working and spending money, but they were no longer paying income taxes.
Ms. Hahn, do we know what the error rate is on E-Verify?
We have 2009 data on the error rate. It is, I think, not the current error rate, but we don't have publicly available current data on the error rate. At the time, what the 2009 data said that the overall error rate for what are called tentative non-confirmations, which is the initial check that the system conducts, were 0.3%. It sounds low until you start thinking about that's 200,000 people in the country.
That means false positives?
Those are people who, yes, are, well, people mean different things by false positives. So just to be clear, those are people who are authorized to work, and the system is saying they are not.
0.3%?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have different numbers? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mr. Fine from Florida.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to start by saying I think illegal immigrants are a scourge in this country. I'm going to walk through why before I get to my question. So I think what we heard a lot of misstatements here about correlation leading to causation. Number one, illegal immigrants undercut American wages. They do by definition because they cannot work on the books. And so as a result, they have to work off the books. And so that is true, that taxes are not being paid, benefits are not being provided. And that, unlike what Ms. Hahn said, that is what leads to more legal workers working off the books. Because in order to be competitive in the job market, companies begin to hire legal workers off the books in order to have them in addition to their illegal workers. That's what I've heard from my constituents who are in the construction business back home. They say, how can I possibly compete for contracts following the rules when I have to compete with those who do not? So number one, illegal immigrants undercut the wages of American workers. Number two, they don't pay taxes. Again, they are off the books. And then number three, they cost a fortune. When an illegal immigrant goes to the hospital, we pay for it because they can't have health insurance. When an illegal immigrant sends their child to school, we pay for it because they're not paying those taxes. And when an illegal immigrant drives a car, for example, in my state of Florida, and they cause an accident, that causes expenses to Americans who have higher auto insurance rates because they effectively have to pay for the insurance of those illegals. I have a view that we should deport every single illegal immigrant in order to solve these problems. And I'm always amazed by the fetishization that I hear on the other side towards these folks. The fact that people are not using E-Verify means that we need to push them to use it more, and we need to increase the penalties to do it, because that is what will increase the situation. If we want people to be trained so that they can take the jobs that illegal immigrants are taking, we need wages to go up. We need to stop competing with illegal immigrants. I don't disagree that in many industries are reliant on illegal immigrant labor today. We need to fix that by sending the illegal immigrants home. So I have a question for Ms. Jenks. This hearing's about E-Verify, but I want to take a step back. This didn't just come out of the blue. It was done for a reason. Why did Congress find it necessary to create an E-Verify system? Why did they think it was important? Did they just sort of wake up one day? Why did they think it was necessary to require employers to only knowingly hire authorized workers and then to impose sanctions on employers who fail to comply? What led them to do this?
So it was first made illegal to hire an unauthorized worker in the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act. It had been talked about by various commissions and members of Congress and so on for years and years prior to that, but they actually did it in 1986 and created the I-9 form, the paper system for employers to try to show that they were only hiring legal workers. The result of that was a massive industry in fraudulent documents. And so as a result of that industry in fraudulent documents, and specifically a recommendation by Barbara Jordan, the chairwoman of the Commission on Immigration Reform created by the 1990 Immigration Act, Congress, Lamar Smith, actually, who was the chairman of the Immigration Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee at the time, and by the way, today is his birthday, so it's very fitting that we're having this hearing today, and he'll kill me if he hears me say that. So he added the basic pilot program, this verification system that became E-Verify, into the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. And it has evolved since that initial pilot program, which was very strictly limited to certain employers in 5 states and then went nationwide in 2005. And by the way, as a small business, our company employs 5 full-time workers. We use E-Verify, and I can tell you that it works in that the very first person I put through the system, I actually hired from ICE and didn't expect a tentative non-confirmation for, and got one, and went to her with the letter that it told me to print out to hand to her, and she said, oh yeah, I forgot to change my name with the Social Security Administration. She went over lunch and did that at the Social Security Administration in Washington, D.C., came back, still from her lunch break, and it was fixed. I ran her again, and she was perfect.
Well, thank you. Look, this is a scourge. We need to be using E-Verify more because we need to deport every single illegal immigrant in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
All right, next we're going to go to Mr. Messmer from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. Ms. Andrus and Mr. Gamvroulis, my home state, Indiana, requires state agencies, local governments, and state contractors to use E-Verify, which not only ensures their workforce is authorized, but sets an example that employers should hire legal workers. Could you discuss the legal requirements for your companies to use E-Verify, and would you say that meeting those requirements to participate in E-Verify is straightforward?
I guess I'll start. Thank you for the question. Yes, it is straightforward to answer the second part of what you said. The legal requirements are that we're a federal contractor, and so we are required to use E-Verify. And for consistency across all of our hiring practices, we do it for all of our hires across the U.S.
Thank you for the question. I would concur with that. We have found that it is straightforward, fairly easy to use, and as I mentioned in my comments, in 15 years we've only had 2 tentative non-confirmations, so identity mismatches out of the literally hundreds of people that we have hired as direct employees.
Thank you. Ms. Jenks, the E-Verify program helps employers ensure they're hiring authorized lawful workers. How does E-Verify also benefit American workers who should not have to compete for jobs with unauthorized workers?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical for protecting American workers because we know that the law of supply and demand applies to the economy. If you flood the labor force with workers, whether they're low-skilled, high-skilled, medium-skilled, whatever, you're going to reduce wages. So when we have flooded the labor force with illegal aliens, we have reduced wages for American workers. They have to compete with people who, understandably, are willing to work for less, willing to take fewer benefits, willing to cut corners on safety compliance and all of that. American workers should not have to compete against illegal aliens.
Thank you. There's been several articles about workers using fraudulent documents that E-Verify didn't catch. How could E-Verify be improved to reduce the fraud?
Yeah, it's an important improvement that is needed, and that is, again, for the states to share driver's license photos with E-Verify. And I want to point out, there is no E-Verify database. There is not an E-Verify database. E-Verify is an internet system that pings DHS databases and Social Security databases. There is no centralized database for all the workers in the United States, and sharing state driver's license photos would not change that. Okay. So we're not talking about national ID card or registry or anything like that. This is a system that pings existing databases.
Okay, thank you. And also, last Congress, the House Republicans passed the Border Act of 2023, Secure Border Act of 2023, to fix some of the glaring issues facing our immigration system today. How would you recommend, if we implemented E-Verify on a national scale, how would you recommend we roll it out, and what would you say are the most important features to keep?
I think that the legislation that was, the E-Verify legislation that was included in the Secure the Border Act is the right legislation. It has been carefully crafted. It was actually negotiated with the business community specifically to provide the single federal system so they don't have to navigate 50 different state laws on E-Verify. It's a rollout based on the size of the company. It is the most straightforward, most employer-friendly, and most American worker-friendly version of mandatory E-Verify, and it should be enacted. It was voted on by the House, as you said, last Congress. It should be voted on again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your responses, and I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Mr. Takano from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, Ms. Andres, do you believe that there's a labor shortage in this country, or do we have enough workers, or do we have too many workers?
I think there's an acute labor shortage specifically within the construction industry.
I'm a little confused by Ms. Jenks's testimony that wages are being driven down by undocumented workers in the context of a labor shortage. So but anyway, I want to go to Ms. Hahn. Ms. Hahn, one study for the Cato Institute estimates that E-Verify failed to stop nearly 12 million unauthorized workers from being hired since 2006 and 2019, while only stopping 3 million. That's a 20% success rate. Can you tell me why E-Verify is so bad at accomplishing its core mission, its core purpose? What is happening under the hood that explains such a poor success rate?
Thank you for the question. So yes, it's true. The Cato study in 2019 found that between 2006 and 2019, they blocked 3 million unauthorized hires and allowed 12 million through. So as a starting point, that's showing that the system is failing on its own terms, on its own stated intent. It is designed to prevent illegal employment, but they confirmed 86% of unauthorized hires just in the year 2018 alone. And the effectiveness has declined as workers have learned how to bypass the system using borrowed identities. So despite billions in compliance costs and the political emphasis on enforcement, the program really hasn't put a dent in unauthorized employment. It has imposed burdens on employers as well as the lawful workers who face these erroneous non-confirmations. And one thing I will just add is that if you look at the data in the states where E-Verify mandates have been enacted, the population of undocumented immigrants in those states does not decline by and large in the time after those state laws are enacted. And so, again, it's what E-Verify does is it drives people off the books. It does not.
Just drives them off the books, and if we were to do a national mandate, we can assume that it's not going to necessarily have an impact on, if we follow what the state, you're suggesting that the state data would point to a federal mandate not being a solution to reducing the amount of undocumented, but just drive people off the books. Okay. In June, immigration, by the way, is Cato a crazy liberal radical
There are a number
socialist,
of issues on which the National Immigration Law Center and Cato have very different views.
Yeah.
This is one issue where we do actually share.
All right, so we can see that Cato was, has no, there's not a sense that they would put out flawed data or ideologically motivated information on this particular issue. In June, immigration authorities raided a meatpacking plant in Omaha, Nebraska for hiring undocumented workers, despite the employer using E-Verify. And when the president of the plant said as much as to the immigration officers during the raid, they, the immigration officials, told the plant manager that the E-Verify system is quote unquote broken. In August, a police department in Maine was caught hiring an undocumented worker for its police force, despite using E-Verify. In response, the Trump administration's own spokesman for the DHS called the usage of E-Verify, quote unquote, reckless, saying, quote, the Orchard Beach Police Department's reckless reliance on E-Verify violates federal law and does not absolve them of their failure to conduct basic background checks to verify legal status, end quote. My views on the brutality and incompetence of the Department of Homeland Security's tactic aside, it seems that even the Trump administration acknowledges the inaccuracy of the E-Verify system. Ms. Hahn, why has DHS all of a sudden come out against E-Verify?
That's a good question. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that they could be, on the one hand, telling everyone that this is the system that they want employers to enroll in. They have a program called Image that E-Verify is part of, and they're trying to encourage employers to voluntarily enroll through that program. And yet, at the same time, the incident in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. This is a small beach town in Maine that hires seasonal police officers in the summer because they have an influx of people to the beach. And the town manager and the head of the police department went on national news and said, this is the system that we have been offered. If there is another system that we should be aware of that you would like us to use, please tell us what it is. They complied with the law.
Time has expired, so we'll go to our next questioner, Mr. Grothman from Wisconsin.
Thank you. I'll talk to Mr. Gonzalez. I used to be in the state legislature, and there's certain lobbyists you wind up getting used to showing up in your office. And I got to know the lobbyist for the local carpenters union very well. And again, he'd come into the office and scream about we had to do more, about all these carpenters who got a employer ID number and were working and undercutting the local carpenters. Okay, so this was a routine theme of the Democrat Party. We gotta be out here. We gotta be more aggressive. We gotta get rid of these 1099s in which they're driving down wages. Why and when did the Democrat Party go from saying that above all, we could not have, above all, we had to prevent these people coming in this country and working and undercutting American labor? And today, when it seems to be they want more and more people in this country, could you speculate on what happened in the interim there?
I cannot. I appreciate that. Neither our company or the NHB wants to speculate on when that happened with the Democrat Party. What I can speak to is the experience that we have had and the interest of the National Association of Home Builders to have a legal workforce.
Okay. Ms. Andrews, do you have a comment on how that could have happened? We've just gone from 180-degree turn here in which all of a sudden the Democrats are doing all they can to drive down the cost of labor.
I too have no comment on that.
Ms. Jenks? Well, Ms. Hahn, we'll go with Ms. Hahn. We'll say, what happened? What happened between when I was in the state legislature 15 years ago, and like the #1 goal of the Democrats and the Carpenters Union was to make sure that we didn't have all these illegals running around or immigrants running around. And today, when it seems to be a goal, is to get more immigrants as possible.
I'm sorry, I can't comment on behalf of the Carpenters Union or the Democratic Party.
Kind of okay, Ms. Jenks?
Yeah, I would be happy to comment. The biggest shift that we have seen is that the unions in general, not any specific union, but the unions in general, decided that protecting American workers was no longer the goal because getting membership dues was more important, and so to increase membership dues, including from illegal aliens and other immigrant workers or non-immigrant workers, they would change their position. I mean, the unions used to be the strongest advocates against amnesty and against illegal immigration, and that flipped.
Okay. Hopefully somebody will step forward and look out for the average guy. Oh, he already did. Guy by the name, the guy by the name, I'm trying to help out right now. Mark Ryle was the lobbyist back for the Wisconsin Carpenters. I'll give you a question. One of the reasons housing costs today are through the roof is we don't have enough people who are electricians or plumbers or what have you. Can you give us any ideas as to how, I mean, I'm afraid the cost of a house will continue to be high because we don't have enough people even in the pipeline. We should have seen it coming because 10 years ago, it seemed like all the plumbers and electricians were 60 years old. So we should have seen this coming. But I think schools were giving young kids very bad information. But can you think of any way we can kind of quickly get more qualified construction workers in the workforce?
Yes, as has been stated, strong domestic and foreign-born workers and skilled training. I take you to one of our job sites and you will see a lot of very skilled labor. And it's estimated that as much as 30% of the workforce on home building sites in the U.S. are foreign-born workers. We need to...
Really quick, I'll ask you because I'm running out of time. What is a plumber or carpenter with 5 years experience? What can you expect that they'll make today?
Oh, they'll make just under 6 figures if they've got 5 years of experience.
Just under 6 years for a carpenter?
That's correct.
And for a plumber, probably more, huh?
That's the skilled labor for sure.
Yeah, well, I hope we have a lot of young people listening so they don't make the mistake of going to college. Thank you.
Thank you, and with that, our members have concluded questioning. I want to thank all of our testifiers here today.
Can I finish my last question?
Time has expired, but we will certainly welcome any comments for the record. So if you would like to submit those, we will make sure that those get into the record. And with that, we're going to head to closing remarks. I'd like to recognize our ranking member for her closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again to our witnesses for speaking with us today. Over the past 2 months, while Republicans shut down the government, working families have been feeling the stain of a slowing job market, higher prices for food, gas, and unaffordable health care. And instead of returning to Congress to address the economic issues facing the American people, we wasted this morning discussing an outdated and ineffective program that does nothing to lower everyday costs, improve job quality, or make workplaces safer and fairer. E-Verify would pile more paperwork and liability on to small businesses, exacerbate hiring discrimination, and deny qualified American job opportunities due to system errors. No one is stopping businesses from choosing to use E-Verify, but most do not bother with it because of its rampant problems. Working families and small businesses are not asking for E-Verify. They are asking for higher wages, paid leave, access to quality, affordable health care and child care. It is our duty to step up and deliver effective solutions to these problems on behalf of our constituents and build an economy that works for everyone. With that, thank you, and I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you, and again, I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for testifying in today's hearing. The topic of E-Verify is a very important one for America's workforce, and after 4 years of massive inflation during the Biden administration that absolutely crushed working families, I can't think of a better topic to focus on than figuring out how we can raise American wages. And what we see with the exploitation of illegal immigrants who are unauthorized to work in this country is that they are being taken advantage of, being paid under the table, being paid substandard wages. That is wage theft. That's something we should be focusing on this committee. Wage theft of any employee, any worker in this country who is authorized to be here, that's something we should focus on. And then when it comes to all of the American workers who are out there, again, after being crushed with higher prices and massive inflation for 4 years during the Biden administration, we want to figure out how to raise American wages. And the way that we can do that is by focusing on things like E-Verify. So this testimony today was very informative. We've heard about the ways that we can actually improve the system. One thing that came up during minority questioning was that 3 million illegal immigrants were blocked from getting hired. That is a fantastic thing. That is incredible that we stopped 3 million people from being unauthorized to work in this country, stealing American wages, taking American jobs. That's great. That is a good thing that this system did, and we should be thankful for the fact that that occurred. But the problem exists. The 12 million illegal immigrants were taking American wages and American jobs. So we should be figuring out solutions to that problem. How do we address that? But the minority wants to, again, be in the 20% minority. This is an 80-20 issue. People will support American workers, American wage increases every single day against illegal immigrant labor that is stealing from them. They are stealing American wages, stealing American jobs, stealing taxpayer money, and the Democrats want to do nothing about that. That's what we heard today. So we have an obligation to stand up for the American worker, and this Workforce Protection Subcommittee does that responsibility at every single hearing. We take it very seriously, and E-Verify is something we should expand upon as we move forward. So we are going to continue to stand with American workers as we move forward, continue to increase American wages, and I want to thank all of you, patriots, for being here today, testifying on behalf of your employees and the American workers who rely on all of us to get these things right, to protect them in their jobs every single day. So with that, I'll conclude, and I want to say thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. With that, this subcommittee is closed, and we are adjourned.